Hello and welcome to this edition of the Potomac Local podcast. I'm Uriah Kiser, publisher of Potomac Local News. Joining us on the podcast today is Ashley Hutson. She is running for the Manassas City Council. She's a first-time candidate, and so we want to welcome her to the podcast and ask her to talk a little bit about why she's running and introduce herself to the community. Ms. Hutson, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much, Uriah. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to all the readers of Potomac Local who will take the time to listen to each and every candidate's platform. I truly appreciate the opportunity. So a little bit about myself. I grew up in Manassas, just about 15 minutes outside of Old Town in the county portion of Manassas. County portion of Manassas. Daughter of blue collar workers. And I'm excited to be running for city council because I love this area. I've seen the city of Manassas grow so much. When I was a kid, there wasn't a whole lot of family activities happening in the city of Manassas. I remember really like the Pied Piper Theater being the only thing that brought my family out this way. Not even really a whole ton of great restaurant options to choose from. So we've really seen so much economic development in Manassas that I think is really exciting, and I'm hoping to continue to be a part of. A little bit more about my background. I work for the Heavy Construction Contractors Association, which represents roughly 200 companies that are involved in road building and site development. So that's everybody from the insurance companies and the bankers to the pipe suppliers, equipment vendors, as well as, of course, the heavy highway and site contractors. I really enjoy being able to work at HCCA because I feel like I get to give back to the industry that raised me. My dad is a construction superintendent and still is. And while working there, which will be 7 years next month, 7 years next month, I think, I have had the privilege of working alongside many of our General Assembly members, as well as our local municipal leaders. In doing that, I really came to realize that our elected leaders are regular people. They are not all knowing, and they need to be educated just like anybody else. The only difference between them and anybody else is that they've had the nerve to get up and run for office and to do the work that is necessary. So through all of that, we've lobbied, we've had a bill go to the floor. We have met in Senator Kane's office to talk about immigration issues. I've been a part of grant writing processes to support the community college system. And within that 200 companies, it's roughly 40,000 people. And of course, that's a similar size to Manassas's 42,000 people. So while I'm advocating for everybody from laborer up to CEO in the construction industry, I believe that skill set will be very helpful in advocating for the people of Manassas and for the businesses in Manassas.
You are one of three Democrats who are running for 3 seats on the city council. As you go around and talk to voters at the doors, door knocking is I'm sure you spent a lot of your summer doing that. I'm sure you'll spend more time as we lead up into the November election doing that, knocking doors, talking to voters. What are you hearing from them, and what kind of conversations are you having with them when it comes to the issues that are facing the voters?
Yeah. I've been knocking doors since about April when I announced my candidacy until the primary. And I'll actually be knocking doors as soon as we finish with this interview today. Common themes that I've heard from voters are environmental preservation, sustainability, trying to make sure that we're being as green as we can be. I have heard some people talk about taxes being high. Comparing real estate and our car taxes to what other localities are doing. I've heard a lot of that. And what's the third thing? Some people have talked a little bit about safety in our neighborhoods. I think there's been incidents, here and there that impact people, of course, if they're, scared at home. That's horrible. So continuing to have prosperous neighborhoods and seeing if we can reduce taxes, I think, are two of the biggest things.
So on the tax piece, I'll ask you. We've seen a lot of growth and investment within the city. We've seen several projects come to fruition, such as the new police station. We've seen the new addition on the museum. We're seeing transportation projects like the third lane on Sudley Road and Grant Avenue, and the rehab project there near Georgetown South. All of that has cost money, and the tax bills over the past 10 years have continued to go up. So when you if you're elected, will you make it a priority to not just lower the tax rate, but also focus on the tax bill, which is at the end of the day what the residents get in the mail? The tax rate may go down, but the bill, because of property valuations, the free market, if you will, the bill continues to go up. So what can be done? What will you do to help residents that you say are saying taxes are just too high?
Hmm. Well, first, with some of those projects that you mentioned, it's important to note that that the city residents' taxes did not fund 100% all of those things that you listed. Some of the road projects definitely had some outside funding as well. But as you know, if you ask, I've heard many of my colleagues say, if you want a cut in taxes, what services would you like to cut? And I think that that's an important question to ask, because Manassas has, world-class services when it comes to our first responders, utilities, teachers. We have great people in place. So it's hard in a world where people continue to need higher and higher salaries to get by, to reduce, or cut back on those things that we're providing. However, I feel the tax, burden like everybody else. My car bill was real high last year. And I think it's important to note, one, that these taxes are, like I said, funding our services. But further, I will be looking at, if it's possible to reduce the tax rate, I think we should absolutely do that.
And would you cut as you said, what services would you want to cut? Are there some out there that you think that could see a reduction in their budget that could
so
lead to a
without
reduction?
I haven't had the chance to comb through the city budget line by line. But when I say that, I mean, let's see if we can generate some other revenues that can allow for a tax rate decrease, such as the data centers that are going to be coming alive next year. That'll be new funds that the city has never seen. And it's sounding like they're going to be a large amount of funds over the next few years. So if it's possible that we can reduce the rate on our residents, I think that is something that we should do. But I also, as you talked about the bill going up, it's, we're not getting any further away from Washington, D.C. And I think, the whole country is experiencing a housing crisis, and the rise in property values, and seeing that in their bills. That's not a city of Manassas issue alone. So
let me ask you about affordable housing. Let's switch gears on you, because you bring it up, and I spent a lot of time talking with Tom Osina about affordable housing yesterday when we talked. He believes that this Manassas shopping center that the city is now owns, with the intention of redeveloping that piece of land on Mathis Avenue, he believes that there's an opportunity there to build affordable housing for those who want to live and work in Manassas.
Yeah.
And so there's always two sides of that argument. There's like, well, it's just the rent's too darn high. I won't cuss, but the rent is too darn high, and we have to do something about it. And in comes the call for affordable housing. On the other side of that coin, you have, well, as you said, we live close to Washington, D.C. Things are expensive because of proximity to the nation's capital and a big city. That's just the free market. That's capitalism at work, setting the rate. The market sets the rate for housing. So what opportunities do you see for affordable housing in the city? Is the shopping center one of them? And would you be willing to say how much of that redevelopment, that shopping center, you would, I guess, reserve for affordable housing? Is that something you would do?
I definitely see an opportunity for affordable housing in the Manassas Shopping Center. Before we have any type of plans in place, or, renderings in place of what this will look like, it's impossible for me to say what percentage I would reserve. I think, one of the things I've talked to some of my friends that work for development companies about is, can we build units that are just simple, like the white cabinets, college, dorm looking finishes. We don't have to be making or building like the most fancy, expensive units like possible in every scenario. Of course, there are people who want those luxuries, but there are people who want a roof, as well. So yeah, I think Manassas Shopping Center will be a good opportunity to reserve some affordable housing. I just heard yesterday Manassas Park actually put out a proclamation for workforce housing for police, teachers, and I forget who else. But that, I think that we should look at that proclamation and see if we can mimic some of that. Of course, it's challenging in the city where we're mostly already, our 10 square miles are pretty much already developed. So wherever affordable housing units are going to go is going to be redevelopment. But as we have, a redevelopment project coming down the line, I would like to hope that we'll have some affordable units there. Yeah.
Let's talk about those 10 square miles and development within those 10 square miles. And specifically, let's talk data centers. We have a story that we published this week. The George Mason University Science and Technology campus, they're raising red flags now because they're walking outside of their campus, which is in the county. We'll preface that it's in Prince William County, not City of Manassas. But they're looking around and they're seeing that all of these data centers have sprung up around their campus. And now they're concerned that they're running out of land should it want to expand for its educational pursuits. It went to the county board of supervisors this week and said, hey, listen, we're concerned. But beyond that, we continue to hear concerns from residents about water, about the and the amount that it uses to cool the centers. But the real concerns that trump water are electricity. And are we going to have enough to power not only the data centers that are currently here, but the ones that are coming? Manassas has 4 within the city that are coming online. And will we have the power? And if we're not going to have enough power, how should we be generating more power to serve the region? So 2-part question here. We know, as you said, the Manassas is 10 square miles. It's pretty much developed. Where are there opportunities for more data centers in the city, and should we see more of these data centers in the city? And then we'll get into how we're going to power them, and maybe what the council should be advocating on for some policies on electricity and what have you. So first, should we have more data centers within the 10 square miles of Manassas?
One thing I'm very proud about with our council that I know we have not seen in surrounding localities is that they have allowed data center development in areas that are already zoned industrial. Just like we've said, when we need new stuff in our 10 square miles, it's going to be redevelopment. So I'm not saying we need a whole bunch more data centers, but if there becomes an opportunity where maybe something that isn't working anymore provides a space that could become, maybe so. But all zoned industrial, certainly don't want anybody's homes to be impeded on. So is 4 enough? Is 4 too many? I couldn't tell you, but I think that where they are located are probably the best places that they can be. And so I'm excited to see that. We wouldn't be able to have this interview like this without those data centers, right? I mean, we wouldn't be able to do most of the things in our daily lives without them. So it's unfortunately kind of a necessary evil that's come about. And although they seem so new, they've been around for a long time. There's just more of them now.
On the environmental concerns, when people are saying that they're concerned about the electricity, the availability of electricity, and there's also the rates. I mean, so if you build more infrastructure to serve the data centers, the cost of that infrastructure is always passed along to the ratepayers, essentially the people who get electric bills in the mail, and their rate goes up. And so we have the fears that there's over, just we'll say electricity, The city council has representatives on boards, think tanks like Northern Virginia Regional Commission, Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. Should the council be advocating for the creation of new sources of energy? I know the Youngkin administration's talked about putting nuclear sites, new nuclear power plants in areas of Virginia. Should the council members, when they go on to these regional think tank boards and commissions, should they be advocating for new energy sources?
So let's back up a little bit, because each of these data centers in Manassas has their own substation that is powering the data centers. Residents do not need to worry about Manassas running out of power because of data centers. The data centers are, I believe, paying for the substations that are being installed. So that's not even being impacted on the taxpayer dollar. So now that we've said that, do I believe that our council should be advocating for more energy sources? Again, a part of our daily lives, we couldn't really do a whole lot without energy. Dominion is not only looking at nuclear, but Dominion also has water power, air power, all around our state. Dominion's currently working on putting really huge windmills off the coast in the Chesapeake Bay. That's going to produce a lot of power, and that project's happening now. So I certainly don't think anybody should be advocating against more power. I think that answered your question.
There you go. Yeah, that does. Thank you very much. Let's talk about some of the non-data center development that we've seen. So over the course of the past 10 years, the city has been buying and selling real estate. It has been very active in the real estate game. And we've seen properties sold off, like one for a data center at the airport that will be developed into a new data center. But what gets headlines is the properties that the city buys, like the Manassas Shopping Center, like the shopping center it purchased to build the new police station that recently opened. So the city has been buying and selling property. If you are elected to council, will you think you will continue that sort of buying and selling, buying more property, expanding the number of properties that the city owns? Will that continue if you get elected?
The city, I don't believe, has plans to continue its ownership of these properties. I think the city is just having a hand in the redevelopment of these properties, and that requires ownership to get that started. Again, without looking at the needs and without being aware of the needs and the availability, I can't say if we will or won't. I do think that I think that residents are a little nervous just because there's so many purchases happening within a fairly short span of time. But I think that and of course it'll be a while before we see any changes in the Manassas Shopping Center at all. Some of those businesses still have pretty long-standing leases. But I think
and some of those sites, to be fair, were one for the fire station that was purchased, for the police station that was purchased, and then most recently Marsteller, the site there that will be a community center. The city has no plans to redevelop that and sell that. Those properties will be held. The ones that you mentioned that will be redeveloped, of course, are the Manassas Shopping Center and the Old Town Inn, which is right downtown. Those two properties were purchased by the city with the intention of redeveloping them and selling them off to a private owner. What should go in the Old Town Inn? We keep hearing there might be an announcement, there might be something, but what's your personal opinion? What should go there in that site?
As I answer this question, let's be reminded that I did not have a vote in any of the decisions that will soon to be announced. I don't know what they're going to put there. I imagine that because it was a hospitality, hotel of sorts, I imagine that it would be replaced with a hospitality hotel of sorts. If it is that, I certainly hope there's some type of parking garage attached or below or something to that nature. But I think, if it was to not be a hotel and it became a mixed use spot where people could live above and shops below, I think that'd be great. too. As long as, I think that purchase was good because that area, that block will be so enhanced once redeveloped.
I'm going to switch gears and talk about the city manager selection process. When I interviewed Councilman Wolf this week, he did admit to me that they have taken longer than they should have to put and hire a new city manager to replace Doug Keene, who has said he doesn't want the job. So if you are, and so from my understanding, we're talking with him, Doug Keene could be in there for the rest of the year, and discussions on a new city manager could come in when the new council is seated. And so if you're elected, what qualities are you looking for in the next city manager?
First, I want to give a huge shout out to Chief Keem because he has done a spectacular job. If we could like copy and paste him and have all his qualities in our next city manager, I think that would be great. But some of those qualities that I think are really great that he shows are just helping people connect when there's misunderstandings. He's really good at kind of re-guiding the conversation if it's getting off track, or just ensuring that everybody's opinions are heard and being understood. I think he does a really nice job, listening and working with all of the staff within the city. And it seems to me with all of the meetings that I've attended with him in place that he is very aware of the procedures that need to happen for decisions and policies. And, at any given meeting, he's, ready to say, well, hold on, we need to have conversations with all these other people before we move this conversation forward. So let's come back, later after that's happened. So really just that, and it's challenging that the person in that job has to be a city resident. I think it's challenging, but it's also a good thing because you want somebody that knows as much about the city as possible. So, in an effort to find the right person, our search pool is already, condensed to people in the city of Manassas, and then people in the city of Manassas who want that job and feel qualified for it, so that's a pretty, I imagine that that's not a gigantic pool of people.
But it's also fair to say that you could do a search, and that person, if they get the job, would agree to a move to the city. That's what we did with Mr. Pate, who came from North Carolina, moved to Manassas, and went back to North Carolina when he left. So are you? And I don't have any. I've not heard details on the search for a new city manager. So are you only interested in interviewing people who only live in the city currently, or would you be open to casting a wider net and looking outside Manassas, looking maybe outside of Virginia to find the right candidate?
I am absolutely open to looking outside of the city and outside of Virginia if that is what it takes.
Good. Okay. Let me switch gears and talk about the schools, and we'll preface the question with the fact the city council does not manage the schools. The school board, the elected school board members, and its staff administration manage the schools. However, the school board does come with hat in hand to the city council every spring, asking for an allocation for their budget. And before I continue, I just want to make sure that you can hear me, because I did see the video freeze there. It froze.
It froze. I heard you say
Right. Okay.
they come with
So
hat out
so every
and
spring,
then
the school board
stop
does come to the city council with hat in hand, asking for a large percentage of its budget. So in fact, the city council is a major funder of the school board, of the school division as a whole, the city schools. And so given that we reported this week that the SOL scores have seen a decline over the previous year, and that city schools lag 20% behind other jurisdictions in the region, and that two schools in the city, Osborne and Metz, are not fully accredited. They're still operating off a COVID era partial accreditation. Would you be willing to set improvement benchmarks during the upcoming budget discussions in April 2025 for the schools?
Well, again, like you said, it's not up to council to set those types of benchmarks. I think it's important that we look at the needs of our students and get the families involved in the schools so that there's more buy-in. That education is important. I mean, I know we're lagging around a little bit in the immediate area, but I think again, this is a national issue of lower test scores and absenteeism. So, I mean, continued investment in our schools and trying to get the families involved, I think is important.
Do you think the school board is on the right track? Do you think they have a plan to improve those scores and bring up to get those schools accredited and come up from, you know, improve those scores overall? Do you think the school board is on the right track?
I think the school board is on a good track, and I think we have some really great candidates for school board this year. As our schools are predominantly people of color, I think having more people of color on the school board is important. As our schools are predominantly Spanish speaking, I think it's important to have a Spanish speaker on our school board for that representation. So shout out Zella Jones and Diana Brown. But yeah, I think that people want to see those test scores come up, and I think our school board is going to be working on that.
Let me ask about the commercial flights at the Manassas Regional Airport. We were the first to report on this development last year when the process was agreed upon. I personally, I think it's exciting to see this type of development happening at that airport. And we learned this week that it's going to be pushed back by a year as they continue to make improvements to get ready for these larger planes that will be flying in and out of the airport. But as excited as I might be personally, or the airport director might be, as to have this deal go through, there are people who live in the area who are concerned about noise and pollution from these added flights. So as this process continues, as we prepare to welcome commercial air flight to the city, if you're elected, what do you tell these residents who have concerns about this new service at the airport?
Well, first, the flights or the planes that we're going to have are not substantially louder than the planes that are already going in and out of that airport. I know I mentioned in one of your recent questions the council meeting I attended last year where they compared the current aircraft to the future aircraft, and the decibel ranges are very similar. At this time, when the commercial flights do start, it's only going to be about 36 flights that's in, like, counting in and out a day. So hopefully that won't be horribly impactful. I think that the benefit will be really great for our city.
And finally, let me just allow you to sort of take the mic and tell people why voters should vote for you and send you to serve on the city council.
Well, I think being from the area is important. I'm somebody that's been in Manassas my entire life, but, you know, besides college. And I believe that I'm coming with a set of skills that will benefit the community. My degree is in Spanish, so I've been able to connect with our Spanish-speaking community. And I think that our Spanish-speaking community brings so much value and culture to Manassas that it's important to listen and to highlight their needs and experience. As I said, I'm coming with 7 years of government affairs experience and advocacy experience. I think we need a millennial voice on the council. And further, I started getting involved in our city back in 2020, when around the time that Donald Trump got elected, because I was like, someone needs to do something scary. So I started getting involved around then. I've been serving on the community advisory committee to the transportation planning board for the capital region. I've been on our building code appeals committee for the city of Manassas. I serve on the VDOT career fair committee, really dedicated to career technical education, which I think are all things that help our city grow and thrive and make sure that our students are employable. These initiatives that I've had experience in through my profession are very similar to the work that is done in public office. So I think that I'm coming with the right set of skills and the right background. And I'm really ready to listen to our residents and do what they ask. I'm not coming with, a personal goal, like personal, issue with the city, as much as I am just trying to be a listening ear and a good representative to our community. So I think the things that make me most eligible, I would say, for this position are that I've been attending city council meetings for well over a year, including their retreat last year, just so I could learn as much as I possibly could about the procedures, the budget, and what they do in the role. And serving on all of these local committees has, helped prepare me to serve on the committees that will be regional and local as a council person. And then, finally, the ability to speak Spanish, I think, is important. I mean, when the fact that we have Sonia Vasquez Luna where she is crucial. And I think the more that we can get our council to represent the people that live in the city, I think would be great.
One last question I have to ask. You are the first person to bring up any presidential candidate, Donald Trump, Joe Biden. You're the first of these interviews that we've done. Is there any policy that you think that Donald Trump did, passed, enacted during his presidency that negatively affected Manassas? And if so, what is it?
Well, the removal of Roe, I think, impacts everybody and makes our lives harder. I think that's, really important. I think it's important to realize that Donald Trump's initiatives are not for the middle class. They're for the most wealthy. They're not concerned with immigrant. In fact, they're putting immigrants down in every opportunity that they can find. And, the way that COVID was handled, just all these different things were just really bad back then.
Ashley Hutson is running for the city council in Manassas. Ms. Hutson, we certainly appreciate you making time and coming on and talking with us today on the Potomac Local podcast.
Thank you much. Appreciate the opportunity.